Dear students, do you have Cheryll Glotfelty's essay, Literary Studies in an Age of Environmental Crisis in your syllabus? Then this video will definitely help you. This is meant for the PG students of English Language and Literature. This gives you a detailed explanation of the essay. All possible questions are included in the last part of the video. Since the essay is very long and requires a lot of explanation, this is divided into two parts. A proper understanding of this essay is very important to answer the most important question: what is the contribution made by Cheryll Glotfelty in the area of eco-criticism? Just for your information, I am Dr. T.C. Brunda Kumari, Research Guide and former HOD, PG Department of English and Research Center, Mercy College, Palakkad. Welcome to the video. Cheryll Glotfelty is a professor of literature and environment at the University of Nevada, Reno, US. She is a prominent figure in the field of eco-criticism and has written several theory books on environmental studies. Glotfelty intends to frame a literary theory based on environmental studies. The questions raised by her are the following. What are the ecological values promoted in literature? How can the environmental structures in literature be examined? What are the possible sets of norms that we can employ to discuss environmental dimensions in literature? How far has literature succeeded in reflecting and shaping our perceptions of nature and ecological issues? Now, let's have a look at the title. There are two expressions that are very important in the title. They are literary studies and environmental crisis. Literary studies means examination and analysis of literature, and environmental crisis means the damage caused to nature by natural calamity or the action of man. Glotfelty discusses the relevance of literature at this age of environmental crisis. She ruminates over the possibility of framing a critical theory based on ecological dimensions, because no theory till then has included ecological issues in its discussion of literature. Moreover, eco-criticism, unlike other theories, has got moral and philosophical aims. The scope of eco-criticism includes nature writing, romantic poetry, films, television, animal stories, and scientific narratives. Eco-criticism is committed to the natural world. It identifies nature and natural things in literature. The theorists, including Glotfelty, who promote eco-criticism, feel that literature has got an ecological function in the cultural system. Eco-criticism discusses several eco-critical tropes like wilderness, animals, dwelling, etc. The major eco-critical trope is wilderness, because wilderness is the real nature of earth. Eco-critics examine human perception of wilderness and analyze how it has changed throughout history. What is the reason for the divergence between literature and nature is an important issue addressed by eco-critics. Their argument is that one main reason for the deviation between literature and nature is the cultural tradition in the West. Culture is not related to or incorporated with nature in the Western tradition. As a result, the protagonists in Western literature are more preoccupied with moral than ecological issues. It was in 1980s that eco-criticism developed. It emerged after postmodernism. In 1980s, scholars began to work collectively to establish eco-criticism as a genre. The term eco-criticism is first used by William Ruckert in his essay entitled Literature and Ecology, an Experiment in Eco-Criticism. Eco-criticism as a movement owes much to Rachel Carson, an American marine biologist and writer. Her work Silent Spring is a fairy tale which concentrates on images of natural beauty and the harmony of humanity and nature that existed before man tampered and damaged it using pesticides. It was Cheryll Glotfelty who coordinated all the works done in the area of eco-criticism. There were several ecologically minded individuals and scholars who published their works often. There was no organized movement to promote the ecological or environmental study of literature. The important works written on this issue remained scattered and categorized under different headings like pastoralism, human ecology, regionalism, American studies, etc. Moreover, eco-critics do not cite examples or ideas of other eco-critics. Eco-criticism gets its main inspiration from major American writers like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Henry David Thoreau, whose works celebrate nature as a life force. The essay, Literary Studies in an Age of Environmental Crisis, is an introductory essay to the anthology, The Eco-Criticism Reader, Landmarks in Literary Ecology, edited by Cheryll Glotfelty and Harold Fromm. The essay begins with the statement that literary studies in the postmodern age is in a state of flux. Glotfelty says that there is no finality regarding theories which examine literature. Theories are formed one after the other, and there is no end to criticism. Theories are always substituted, revised, and modified by other theories. This is the condition of the English and American critical scenario. In the introductory part of the essay, Glotfelty makes a reference to the anthology, Redrawing the Boundaries, the Transformation of English and American Studies, edited by Stephen Greenblatt and Giles Gunn. She says that this anthology, though accepted as an authoritative guide to contemporary literary studies, does not represent the real critical scenario. She argues that even though it is said in the introduction of this anthology that the essays have responded to contemporary pressures, they have actually ignored the most pressing contemporary issue, which is the global environmental crisis, in spite of its declaration in the introduction that these essays have disclosed contemporary pressures. So, the absence of discussion of the global environmental crisis suggests that the theories that are formed due to revisionistic energies are purely academic and not related to nature and life. They do not relay environmental crisis. Glotfelty tells us that if we limit ourselves to those major publications of these scholars, we could understand issues related to race, class, and gender, but we could never understand the real condition of Earth's life-supporting systems. We will never know that Earth's life-supporting systems are in danger. Glotfelty says that while disciplines like history, philosophy, law, and sociology had discussed environment since 1970s, literary studies alone remained unaffected by environmental concerns. There were no journals, no conferences, and no discussions on literature and environment. There was no sign that the institution of literary studies had been aware of the environmental crisis. Even though this was the general condition of literary studies, if we closely read the anthology, we can see that some of the essays in this collection inform us that some individual literary and cultural scholars have been developing ecologically informed criticism and theory since the 70s. What the writer tries to tell us is that there are individual attempts, but there is no collective attempt to coordinate literature and environment. Eco-criticism did not become a presence in major institutions of power in the profession like MLA. Because there is no single strong voice in this area which can compel institutions listen, all these voices seem to be howling in the wilderness in isolation, not heard by others, not having an impact on others. Now, next section is birth of environmental literary studies, how environmental literary studies originated. This section is about the birth of environmental literary studies. In the mid-80s, scholars started to conduct seminars, sessions, and collaborative projects in the field of environment and literary studies. This section gives us the attempts of the scholars to popularize environmental studies during this period and their aims. So in 1985, Frederick O. Wagg edited Teaching Environmental Literature, Materials, Methods, Resources. This included the description of the environmental courses to be added in the university syllabus. Another attempt to foster interaction among individuals interested in writing on nature and environment, the American Nature Writing Newsletter was founded in 1989 by Alicia Nitteke. Some universities began to include literature courses in their environmental studies curricula. In 1990, the University of Nevada created the first academic position in literature and environment. Cheryll Glotfelty was appointed in that position. Many special programs were organized by scholars like Harold Fromm to arouse consciousness about environment. In 1992, Association for the Study of Literature and Environment was formed. Now let us have a look at the aims of these attempts. The establishment and first aim is the establishment and standardization of the field of literature and environment. Second aim, promotion of consciousness regarding our ecosystem. Third, promotion of exchange of ideas connected to natural writing. 4, to encourage new writing in this field. In 1993, ecological literary study had emerged as a recognizable critical school. Next section is definition of eco-criticism. The fundamental premise of ecological criticism is that human culture is affected by the physical world. According to Glotfelty, eco-criticism is the study of the relationship between literature and the physical environment. It takes an earth-centered approach to literary studies. Questions raised. Now we are going to see the questions raised in eco-criticism. First question, how is nature represented in literature? Whether the values in literature favor nature? How do the writers make use of the metaphor of the land? Next question raised by eco-criticism or eco-critics is that how is imagination framed by nature? Eco-criticism takes as its subject the interconnection between nature and culture, especially the cultural artifacts of language and literature. There is connection between language and literature, and nature, language and literature. Nature and language and literature are cultural, literature and nature, language and literature are cultural products. Now, eco-criticism is distinguished from other critical approaches. Other theories examine the relationship between writers, texts and the world. In these theories, world is just taken as a social sphere. In other theories, world is just taken as a social sphere and they exclude nature. Whereas eco-criticism includes nature. It includes not only society but also the entire ecosphere in nature. It is intricately connected to complex global system. Eco-critics then ruminated over the possibility of naming the new nature-based theory. In Comedy of Survival, Studies in Literary Ecology, Joseph W. Meeker introduced the term literary ecology. See, it was Joseph W. Meeker who introduced the term literary ecology to refer to the study of biological themes and relationships which appear in literary works. The term eco-criticism was first coined in 1978. The term eco-criticism was first coined in 1978 by William Ruckert in his essay Literature and Ecology, an experiment in eco-criticism. By eco-criticism, Ruckert meant the application of ecology and ecological concepts to the study of literature. The central question of the eco-critical approach is how is nature and critical issues related to it are represented in literature. The fundamental understanding is that human world is not only connected to the physical environment but also shaped by it. Eco-criticism takes as its subject the interconnection between nature and culture. The term eco-criticism is taken by many as a suitable name or term for the field as it refers to nature and interdependable systems in the center. This area is also known as eco-poetics, environmental literary criticism, and green cultural studies. Now we have come to the close of our first video. The rest of the material will be discussed in the following videos. By then, thank you. Thank you very much.